It's shocking how quickly what once felt like unbreakable bonds can shatter. The protagonist of our story initially appeared to be a casualty of some risky sexual escapades. Yet, as time unfolded, it became painfully clear that this initial explanation was far from the truth. What does one do when the prime suspect in a grave case seems to slip through the fingers of justice? Is it truly worth battling for the truth, or is surrender the path of least resistance? These are the questions we'll explore in today's video. Mario Biondo, a native of Italy, was one of three sons born to Santino da Alessandro and Giuseppe Biondo. Their family was widely recognized for their warmth and kindness. From an early age, Mario displayed a keen interest in creative pursuits and photography, which naturally led him into the world of audiovisual production as he grew older. This field demanded talent, extensive knowledge, and innovative thinking, qualities he showcased brilliantly. He soon joined a television technical support team. Throughout his life, he was a dedicated volleyball player, competing in numerous team tournaments. This sport instilled in him the vital lessons of teamwork, trust, and resilience in the face of setbacks. Mario, with his striking good looks and undeniable charm, captivated many. It was Mario Biondo who crossed paths with Raquel Sanchez Silva, a Spanish native. Raquel, after earning her journalism diploma in 1994, set her sights on becoming a TV presenter. While her mother Matilda's connections certainly aided her path, Raquel herself was an intelligent and accomplished woman whose talent was genuinely remarkable. Their paths converged in Honduras in 2011, on the set of the reality show Celebrity Island, where Mario worked as a cameraman and Raquel served as the host. She was 10 years his senior. According to all her friends and acquaintances, Raquel was instantly smitten. Her newfound feelings for Mario were so profound that she openly expressed them, a behavior uncharacteristic of her prior to their encounter. Fortunately, their affection was reciprocated, and they began a relationship undeterred by the age gap. This intelligent and gifted couple garnered widespread admiration, becoming local celebrities whose lives were closely observed by the entire public. In June 2012, the journalist and cameraman exchanged vows in Sicily. It was a quintessential Italian wedding, beautiful and traditional. The festivities resonated for days, celebrated on a grand scale. Many believed that such a magnificent union, aligning with local customs, would ensure a long and joyful married life. Regrettably, fate had a different plan. Barely a year after their wedding, a devastating tragedy unfolded. On Wednesday, May 29th, 2013, Mario and Raquel experienced a disagreement. It was a minor quarrel, typical of many young couples, which they ultimately resolved through reconciliation. Having been married for nearly a year, they were residing in Raquel's apartment in central Madrid. Raquel had an upcoming commitment in her hometown of Plasencia. Around 8:30 p.m. that evening, the couple bid farewell in the garage, and she departed. This trip had been prearranged, and everything appeared to be proceeding as planned. Mario remained alone at home. Following his wife's departure, Mario made 3 phone calls. One was to his sister, Emanuela, in Sicily, to whom he enthusiastically shared his ambitious plans, upcoming television projects, including a new program he was developing, and a future dream of traveling the world with Raquel while launching a travel blog. The other 2 calls were made, with one presumably connecting him to a dealer for psychoactive substances. Later that evening, around 10 p.m., Mario visited a nearby ATM, withdrawing 110 euros that were never recovered from his apartment, suggesting they were spent. Roughly an hour later, at 11 p.m., a neighbor encountered Mario at the entrance to the apartment complex. She noted his slightly unusual behavior. He seemed to ignore her, despite his usual politeness, and appeared upset. However, she saw no immediate cause for alarm. Around this time, Mario called his wife. Their conversation lasted until midnight. after which they continued to exchange text messages via instant messengers. Their discussions largely revolved around their current life matters and shared concerns, particularly their difficulties with conception. Raquel, aged 40, ardently desired children but had been unable to conceive. This issue weighed heavily on the couple. Mario speculated that he might be infertile due to a past illness. The man also spoke with his brother Andreo, outlining many intriguing new projects he envisioned for the future. His communications, both on social media and by mobile phone, persisted until 1 a.m., when Mario fondly bid his wife goodnight, stating his intention to go to bed. Yet, rest was evidently not his immediate plan. Around 2 a.m., he was reportedly browsing various adult websites featuring explicit content. Following this, he used Google Maps to locate the nearest strip club to his residence, arriving there at 2:53 a.m. He paid for 3 drinks using his card, but no other services were purchased. After spending some time at the establishment, Mario returned home. Once back, he again accessed adult sites. His final recorded computer activity, around 6 a.m., was an entry detailing an approximate budget for a new television show he was developing. Subsequently, he checked his messengers for unread messages, but initiated no new conversations. From that point forward, Mario exhibited no further activity. The following morning, neither his family nor his wife could reach him. Initially, everyone assumed Mario was either resting or deeply engrossed in his new projects, and they chose not to disturb him. At this point, no one close to him raised an alarm. However, around 3:30 p.m., Raquel received a call from her husband's workplace, inquiring about his whereabouts. The producer wished to know why Mario had not arrived at the studio for filming. This absence was highly uncharacteristic for him, especially considering that day's shoot was for a cooking program, one of his favorite projects. Mario was known for his dedication and responsibility, never letting his team down or disrupting filming without valid reason. Still unable to reach him by phone or social media, a worried Raquel contacted their housekeeper, Vilma, asking her to check on him. Around 5 p.m., Vilma arrived at the apartment, speaking with Raquel on the phone. The moment she opened the door, a loud scream escaped her lips as she beheld a horrific scene. Vilma immediately rushed outside, having discovered Mario's lifeless body within the apartment. She flagged down a passing police car, informing them of her dreadful find. Other emergency crews were swiftly dispatched, arriving within minutes. Law enforcement personnel discovered the lifeless body of the 31-year-old man, dressed in pajamas. A scarf was tied around his neck, with the other end secured to a living room shelf, giving the appearance that Mario had ended his own life. The images from the scene are truly disturbing, and I will share them on my Telegram channel, with the link available in the description and pinned comment. A preliminary police search revealed no signs of forced entry through doors or windows, indicating no external attempts to break in. Furthermore, no obvious signs of a struggle were present. Only a few bruises were noted on the deceased's legs, which did not appear consistent with defensive wounds. All these observations seemed to corroborate the initial theory of voluntary suicide. Upon learning of the tragedy, Mario's 40-year-old wife, then a housekeeper, completed her duties and returned home. She informed detectives that Mario occasionally engaged in strangulation during sexual activities, suggesting this might have been the cause of the tragedy. This detail intrigued the detectives, leading them to consider this explanation. While there was no immediate evidence to refute it, the investigation refrained from hasty conclusions. Raquel adamantly requested immediate cremation of the body, but this was denied as the medical examiner required further time for analysis and assessment. On June 1, 2013, Mario's family lodged a formal complaint, contesting the investigation's initial findings. In their view, Mario's character was completely antithetical to someone who would end his own life. He was a highly driven individual with numerous ambitious future plans, of which he was immensely proud. His life seemed to be thriving, offering no discernible motive for suicide. Mario's relatives also opposed cremation, insisting on a traditional burial. Given that all individuals involved in the case were well-known figures in Spain, this tragic event immediately captured public attention. Raquel posted a somber message on her social media page regarding her husband's death, emphasizing Mario's cheerful and ambitious nature, but suggesting that suicide, perhaps due to personal issues or an accident, might have occurred. The widow subtly implied that sexual proclivities could have played a role. She urged friends and concerned individuals to refrain from premature judgments and await the investigation's ultimate findings. The initial forensic expert concluded Mario's death was accidental, pinpointing the time of death to approximately 6 a.m., when his phone activity ceased. Consequently, the case of Mario Biondo's death was officially closed, with no further investigation planned. The deceased body was laid to rest on June 6, 2013, in his Italian hometown. Both Mario's widow and his relatives attended the funeral. Raquel publicly renounced her husband's inheritance in favor of his family, an act that initially appeared noble. Subsequently, the widow began to distance herself from them, relocating to another apartment and selling the one she shared with Mario. She later voluntarily resigned from her television role. Those who interacted with her during this period observed no tears or visible signs of grief. She seemed entirely detached from the tragic events. Her disappearance from the public eye was brief, however. By June 27, 2013, Raquel had reappeared on a television program, swiftly resuming her role as a TV presenter. She attributed this quick return to seeking solace and a means to forget through her work. Yet, her bereavement did not hinder her from rapidly commencing a new relationship. The man was Matthias Dumont, a businessman who had previously interviewed Raquel on a show. Mario's relatives were bewildered by the widow's conduct. It struck them that she seemed to have completely erased her husband from her mind, despite their passionate connection just weeks prior. Her increasingly peculiar behavior fueled a growing number of questions and suspicions. Driven by these doubts, Mario's relatives approached the police, requesting a supplementary investigation into his death and specifically asking for a review of his wife's actions. Initially, police officers declined, citing the case's closure, but eventually consented to re-examine the evidence. 7 months after Mario's death, in December 2013, his body was exhumed. Additionally, the police re-interviewed all witnesses pertinent to the case. Mario's family also funded the work of 2 independent forensic experts, convinced that the initial forensic analysis was flawed. These experts conducted a more exhaustive investigation into the circumstances of death, utilizing techniques such as computer modeling. Their findings indicated that Mario's posture was inconsistent with a voluntary suicide. He simply could not have positioned himself in that manner to self-asphyxiate. The placement of his feet, the discrepancy in the ligature mark on his neck, and the nature of the scarves not all suggested a staged scene, clearly implying external assistance. Armed with this compelling information, Mario's family presented it to the detectives for inclusion in the case file. The detectives found the new data compelling and began to gravitate towards the conclusion that Mario's death was, in fact, a homicide. Consequently, the case was reopened and the investigation resumed. The direction of the investigation had now completely reversed, a full 180-degree turn. The significant challenge, however, was the substantial passage of time since the death, leading to the destruction of potentially crucial evidence. News of this turn quickly spread, prompting public demand for answers regarding Mario's suspicious demise. Concurrently, in Mario's home country, his relatives' pressure spurred the local police to launch their own inquiry. Utilizing the independent forensic experts' autopsy results, Italian investigators also leaned towards a murder theory. They traveled to Spain multiple times, conducted their own autopsy, and interviewed Mario's inner circle, including the widow. They strongly suspected she was withholding information due to consistent inconsistencies in her statements. They noted crime scene photos showed an ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts and numerous empty beer cans in the apartment, suggesting Mario was not alone that night. These items, crucial potential evidence, were apparently discarded without ever being checked for fingerprints or DNA. No suicide note was ever discovered. What was particularly perplexing was the deletion of nearly thousands of gigabytes of data from Mario's computer, a discovery made by Italian detectives. However, they were unable to restore this data because their Spanish counterparts reportedly withheld necessary access. Upon learning this, Mario's mother theorized that her daughter-in-law had purged compromising photos and videos from the computer, content Mario might have discovered shortly before his death. Perhaps the widow harbored other secrets she feared would be exposed. Mario's family speculated that his activity that night, browsing adult sites and visiting a strip club, was not merely recreational, but that he was actively searching for his wife there. They considered the possibility that he had uncovered something damaging about her, providing a motive for his elimination. It was later established that the password on Mario's computer had been changed after his death, and subsequently, these files were deleted. Crucially, these manipulations occurred on the day of the funeral, when Mario's entire family and widow were at the cemetery. This begged the question, who could have done it? It emerged that Raquel had a brother, a computer engineering genius, who was not present at the funeral and thus could have carried out these actions at her behest. In May 2014, Raquel once more became the focus of public attention. She was invited to participate in a television program dedicated to her husband's death, but she unequivocally refused, not only to appear, but also to offer any commentary on the events. Despite this, she did make an appearance before journalists in September 2014. Following these developments, Raquel publicly accused her former mother-in-law of persecution. In retaliation, Mario's relatives branded her a liar and implicated her in his death. They had consistently believed she was responsible for what happened to Mario, but Raquel staunchly denied all accusations, and no direct evidence linked her to the crime. Nevertheless, Raquel proceeded with her life as usual. In September 2015, she remarried and later gave birth to twins, a result of hormone therapy required for conception. This revealed that the fertility issues had been hers, not Mario's. The children's father was the same businessman she had met through television. Raquel, seemingly having moved on, no longer dwelled on her ex-husband and appeared to be fully embracing her new life. Mario's mother, however, remained relentless in her efforts to establish the widow's culpability. At one point, she resorted to an extreme measure, publishing actual crime scene photos taken by police. These images depicted Mario suspended in an unnatural, lifeless position. The post was accompanied by a forensic report from independent experts, which theorized murder, eloquently explaining that voluntary self-termination in such a manner was physically impossible. The photographs highlighted significant discrepancies with the initial police conclusions reached by officers who seemed intent on closing the case swiftly. Specifically, the previously described half-bent position of the legs was contradicted, as the body was clearly suspended with straight legs, feet resting on the floor. This desperate attempt to expose the true events of 2013 ignited widespread public outrage, compelling detectives, now under intense public criticism, to actively resume their investigation. In 2016, this public uproar culminated in a lawsuit with the widow. Yet another autopsy was conducted by the state medical examiner, who once again concluded Mario's death was a voluntary suicide. Raquel prevailed in the case, and the court ordered Mario's mother to pay her €3,000 in moral damages. Following this, Mario's mother was even subjected to 8 days of house arrest. This incident became a hotbed of rumors and a dominant topic in media discussions. Subsequently, a televised appeal was made, reiterating that Mario had died by his own hand. The prevailing theory suggested he was deeply distressed by his infertility, unable to provide children to the woman he loved, and thus chose to end his life. The case was once again closed in Spain. Italian police, citing procedural limitations that made new investigative actions impossible after so many years, also opted not to pursue the case further. However, they did criticize the Spanish police for negligence in their initial handling of Mario's death investigation. However, the investigative narrative did not conclude there. In 2017, a new figure entered the scene: Spanish forensic expert Luis Duca. After meticulously analyzing the circumstances of Mario's death, Duca definitively concluded that suicide, under no circumstances, was a voluntary act. His expertise carried considerable weight, given his 15 years of experience in unraveling the most intricate cases. The criminologist affirmed that he had exhaustively reviewed the entire dossier and all police-held case materials. His work was underwritten by Mario's family. Duca unequivocally substantiated the deceased's relative suspicions, noting Mario displayed none of the typical signs of strangulation, such as visceral plethora or petechial hemorrhage. In Duca's professional judgment, Mario could not have instantly broken his neck from such a height, nor could he have died from suffocation, as his heels were touching the floor. For cerebral ischemia to occur, a tightly applied noose around the neck is required. Yet the scarf in question did not properly fit the back of his head, partially encircled it, and the knot on his neck was so loose that his head could have easily slipped free. The partial blueness of the body indicated he had died while lying down. Crucially, there were no signs of convulsions typical of death throes. Not a single object, figurines, photo frames, etc., had fallen from the shelves, which would have been inevitable under such circumstances. The physical forces involved would also not permit his head to be in that reported position. Furthermore, a fresh, inexplicable wound was observed on Mario Biondo's left temporal region. The furrow on Biondo's neck was inconsistent with the scarf. It strongly suggested he had been strangled with a different object, possibly a rope or cable. The abrasion on his neck could not be solely attributed to gravity. Moreover, the chosen position for suicide was highly questionable. Mario, the expert pointed out, would have had far more comfortable methods to end his life than the extremely awkward posture in which his body was discovered, as per initial police reports. The degree of rigor mortis and his exceptionally low body temperature led experts to postulate that Mario died significantly earlier than 6 a.m., likely just after midnight. Regarding the sexual games hypothesis, Duca deemed it unconvincing, given Mario was fully clothed and exhibited no signs of engaging in any self-manipulation or games. Utilizing specialized software and obtaining specific characteristics of the metal shell from its manufacturer, experts determined that if Mario had died in the manner presented, his body would have fallen to the floor. Therefore, the only plausible conclusion was that he had been strangled elsewhere earlier, and the scene was subsequently staged. These compelling findings necessitated another exhumation of Mario's previously embalmed body. During this re-examination, a significant hematoma was discovered in the deceased's brain, an injury consistent with a powerful blow from a blunt object. Information about this crucial finding was conspicuously absent from the reports of earlier forensic autopsies. The question arose, how could such vital information have been overlooked? It strongly suggested intentional concealment. Coinciding with the release of this new data, Raquel altered her testimony. Previously, she had maintained that her husband's use of strangulation in sexual games, combined with an accident or personal reasons, led to his death. Now, she posited that Mario might have been with someone he trusted in her absence, and this individual could have harmed him. She also speculated that her husband might have consumed alcohol or illicit substances, rendering him incapacitated and unable to resist an assailant. A new theory thus emerged. Mario had allowed an acquaintance into his home, who then delivered a severe blow to his head with a blunt object, causing him to lose consciousness. Subsequently, a scarf was placed around his neck, used to strangle him. The absence of struggle signs was explained by his immediate incapacitation, leaving him no time to resist. Following the act, the killer staged a voluntary suicide and silently departed the apartment. This revised version accounted for the lack of forced entry or signs of strangers entering the residence. In October 2018, Italian writer Paolo gently released a book titled The Death of a Good Guy, The Incredible Story of Mario Biondo. This work, penned in collaboration with Mario's mother, who remained a pivotal figure in this challenging case, aimed to defend her son's honor and uncover the truth behind his death. The book portrayed Raquel Sanchez Silva as a cold and calculating individual, referring to her by the moniker Laguna. On November 5, 2018, following a third autopsy and with authorization from Italian authorities, the Anatomical Institute of the Palermo Polyclinic was tasked with conducting a thorough examination, including X-rays and a CT scan. Independent experts retained by Mario's family participated in these procedures. In 2019, the deceased parents filed a formal complaint against the coroner who attended the crime scene in 2013. The subsequent investigation exposed several significant violations committed by this official. This law enforcement officer was convicted in May 2020, and both the doctor who performed the autopsy and his assistant faced penalties. Consequently, the investigation into Mario's death was once again reopened. Gradually, new facts concerning the incident came to light, and dozens of specialists from the fields of forensic science and forensic medicine became involved. The inherent challenge was that much of the material initially used in the investigation could no longer be deemed reliable, and crucial evidence had simply been overlooked due to the previous suspension of the inquiry. One of the most egregious violations unearthed in this case was abuse of office. It was proven that prosecutors had tampered with PDF files containing purported evidence of social media conversations and visits to adult websites that police had initially claimed. This unequivocally demonstrated that Mario had neither visited adult websites nor called a dealer to purchase drugs on the night of his death. All of this had been deliberately fabricated. A review of Mario's network connections that night exposed that two individuals were connected to the apartment's Wi-Fi, despite him supposedly being home alone. Furthermore, there was absolutely no evidence that Mario ever left the house. His supposed movements to the ATM and the strip club were based solely on the activation of his bank card at those locations, but it was not definitively proven that Mario himself used the card. It appeared someone had intentionally used his card to portray him in the worst possible light, as a pervert and a drug addict. Yet, if he were such a pervert, why did he only pay for drinks at the strip club and not avail himself of any other services? Unfortunately, with the passage of years, recordings from ATM and street surveillance cameras had, predictably, been erased, making it impossible to verify who withdrew money or was present at the club. Another puzzling aspect was why Mario, a public figure constantly under scrutiny, would visit a dubious strip club and openly use his card, when he could have paid in cash to maintain discretion regarding his activities. Toxicological examination revealed only a minor concentration of alcohol in the deceased system, with no presence of illicit substances. The neighbor who claimed to have seen Mario that evening later expressed doubts about his identity. Moreover, it was discovered that Mario had been checking the weather forecast for the following day, intending to ride his motorcycle, an inexplicable action if he planned to end his life. None of these details aligned. A new witness emerged, a waiter from a restaurant directly opposite Mario's building. He testified that by morning, customers were already buzzing about something terrible happening, with police cars and ambulances actively arriving. This sharply contradicted the official timeline, as the housekeeper only discovered Mario's body after 4 p.m. Despite these fresh discoveries, the investigation faced formidable obstacles. Firstly, much of the evidence had become outdated. Secondly, reconstructing a reliable sequence of events proved impossible. And thirdly, the initial law enforcement officers involved had committed so many errors and procedural deviations that compiling materials from scratch was deemed necessary. Yet, due to the irrecoverable loss of time, this task proved insurmountable. In August 2022, the Spanish justice system decided to archive the case due to insufficient evidence. Mario's family, however, adamantly opposed this decision. Their unwavering appeals to every possible authority yielded a minor triumph. Their relatives' persistence led to the case being reopened and reclassified as a murder. In March 2023, the Biondo family undertook another journey to Spain, determined to further clarify the incident's circumstances and, at last, definitively prove that Mario's ex-wife was complicit in the crime. In their resolute conviction, no one else could have perpetrated this act. They argued that in the final weeks of their lives, Mario and Raquel's relationship had severely fractured, exacerbated by fertility issues, and they were on the cusp of divorce. The family speculated that Raquel likely sought to avoid sharing assets with Mario, and that he might have uncovered a damning secret or possessed compromising information about her, providing a potent motive for the crime. Concurrently, it was Raquel who had vehemently pushed for immediate cremation upon seeing his body, as if eager to conceal something. Moreover, only she and the housekeeper held keys to the apartment, and no one seriously believed the elderly domestic worker was capable of killing Mario. The deceased family maintained that Mario would never have invited anyone into his home in the dead of night, especially given his need for an early start the next morning. Mario's family contended that Raquel, a highly intelligent woman, orchestrated everything with meticulous precision. She allegedly established an alibi by traveling to another city, hired an accomplice to stage a voluntary suicide, and meticulously attempted to discredit her husband with fabricated narratives about his supposed unhealthy fantasies involving strangulation, adult websites, and strip clubs. Ironically, traits that perhaps applied more to her. They claimed she even introduced this fabricated information into the official case file. His family also found her swift relocation from the apartment peculiar, viewing it as if she were concealing something and hastily disposing of property to erase her footprints. Furthermore, her widely lauded rejection of Mario's inheritance, it was revealed, was far from a noble gesture. It transpired that Mario's liabilities outweighed his assets. Had she accepted the inheritance, she would have been responsible for his significant debts and his substantial inheritance tax, rendering the inheritance financially impractical for her. Even Raquel's presence at the funeral struck many as a stage performance, a spectacle. She arrived accompanied by assistants who meticulously managed her every move. When to emerge, how to approach the grave, and precisely where to stand for optimal photographic coverage. She even requested private time before the grave, ostensibly to pose better for the cameras. All of these actions defied comprehension from Mario's family. Raquel's peculiar request that Christian, Mario's nephew, not attend the funeral also seemed odd to close relatives. She rationalized this by stating she wished to spare the boy from negative emotions. Despite her request, the teenager did attend his uncle's funeral. Relatives later grasped the underlying truth. Raquel had sold exclusive photographic rights from the cemetery to journalists, for whom she posed, and Christian's presence would have detracted from her carefully choreographed poses. Some experts who interacted with Raquel posit that the widow exhibits traits of a typical integrated psychopath, an individual characterized by manipulative and narcissistic tendencies, adept at concealing their true identity to evade exposure. Such individuals are often described by the adage, "Everyone sees who you appear to be. Few perceive who you truly are." Raquel, behind the facade of a sweet, beautiful woman, expertly masked her darker nature, a side her husband reportedly uncovered, and coincidentally, soon after, he lost his life. Mario's family firmly believes that Raquel, leveraging her intelligence and manipulative tendencies, executed her plan flawlessly, making it exceedingly difficult to definitively prove her involvement, despite the apparent circumstances. Even a decade after the presumed murder, Mario's family remains unwavering in their quest for truth and justice. Meanwhile, Raquel, now 50, proceeds with her life seemingly undisturbed, having built a new family and immersed herself in her career. She persistently denies any complicity in the murder. If you found this presentation compelling, please consider subscribing to the channel, giving this video a like, and sharing your thoughts on this complex story in the comments below. I also suggest checking out these other videos. Thank you all for watching, and farewell.